What is more terrifying, a king erased by his enemies, or a face that once commanded empires, now frozen in stone and forgotten? Welcome to History Reborn AI. History preserves thrones, victories, and legends, but behind every monument stands a human being who paid the price in silence, in blood, and in the slow darkness of erasure. In this video, we walk through 20 ancient kings whose civilizations once shook the world. Kings whose faces are now returning through AI reconstruction. If history moves you, share this video and stay until the end. Because the face waiting at number 1 may be the oldest unanswered question power has ever asked. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Number 20. He sits in silence before his gods, hands clasped, eyes wide and still. Gudea ruled the city-state of Lagash in ancient Sumer around the 22nd century before the Common Era. His legacy survives in an extraordinary series of diorite statues, seated, kneeling, praying, some preserved in the Louvre and other major collections worldwide, providing the foundation for his AI reconstruction. History remembers him as a pious builder, a king who raised temples and gave offerings to the divine. But devotion, in Gudea's world, was also a form of survival. Power required the blessing of the gods to exist at all. He left more images of prayer than images of conquest. The statues still kneel. The man behind them dissolved long ago into Sumerian dust. Number 19. He built cities, organized armies, and carved justice into stone. Ur-Nammu founded the third dynasty of Ur around 2,112 years before the Common Era, raising one of Sumer's most powerful kingdoms from ruin. The stele of Ur-Nammu, showing the king in sacred ceremony, alongside fragments of royal relief, provides the visual basis for his AI reconstruction. History knows him as a lawgiver, the builder of Ur's great ziggurat, and one of the earliest architects of written law. But that code was not born from peace. It was carved because men had stopped trusting one another. He gave Sumer its laws. He could not give his dynasty permanence. Number 18. His triumph was carved in stone, and the stone was covered in the dead. Ur-Nammu ruled the city-state of Lagash around the 25th century before the Common Era, and his most enduring monument is the Stele of the Vultures, one of the earliest surviving records of organized warfare in human history. The relief depicting the king leading armored infantry over fallen enemies gives AI a rare visual foundation for one of Sumer's most aggressive rulers. History calls him a conqueror, the man who extended Lagash's reach over rival city-states. But his glory was recorded in mass graves and circling birds. Victory, on that stone, arrived wearing the cold silence of ash. Number 17. He looked like a man who needed the world to believe him. Ur-Nammu ruled the kingdom of Alalak in northern Syria around the 15th century before the Common Era. His surviving statue, solemn, seated, with inlaid eyes and over 100 lines of autobiography carved across its surface, stands as one of antiquity's most personal royal portraits. AI reconstruction draws directly from this haunting likeness, now held at the British Museum. History remembers him as a king who returned from exile to reclaim his throne. But the story begins not in triumph, but in dispossession. He lived as a fugitive prince, waiting for the world to allow him home. He won his crown back. The shadow of the man who once had nothing never fully left his eyes. Number 16. His face survives on something no larger than a thumb. Endubis ruled the kingdom of Aksum, in the region of modern-day Ethiopia and Eritrea, around the late 3rd and early 4th centuries of the Common Era. He is among the earliest Aksumite rulers, known to have minted coins bearing a royal portrait, small gold and bronze discs that preserve his likeness with surprising clarity and serve as the primary reference for AI reconstruction. History knows Aksum as one of the ancient world's great trading empires, commanding routes between Africa, Arabia, and the Mediterranean. Yet many of its kings have been nearly erased from public memory. His face still gleams beneath museum light. His kingdom has all but vanished into silence. Number 15. No pharaoh ever allowed his sculptors to show this much pain. Senusret III ruled Egypt during the 12th dynasty, around the 19th century before the Common Era, and the statues that bear his likeness are unlike almost anything else in ancient Egyptian royal art. Deep-set eyes, heavy brows, a face carved with the unmistakable weight of a man, eroded by the thing he was required to be. These remarkable portraits, held in the British Museum, the Brooklyn Museum, and other major collections, form the basis for AI reconstruction of his face. History remembers him as a warrior pharaoh and reformer, but his own sculptors revealed what the throne demanded. The crown did not elevate him, it consumed him. No god wears that expression. Only a man who was never permitted to be weak. Number 14. He inherited the height of Egypt's Middle Kingdom and its invisible fractures. Amenemhat III ruled during the late 12th dynasty, around the 19th and 18th centuries before the Common Era, leaving behind a body of royal portraiture, sculpted heads with strikingly individual features that provides a strong basis for AI reconstruction. History remembers him as a builder and administrator, a pharaoh who harnessed the Fayum for Egypt's benefit and commanded the kingdom at its peak. But prosperity on that scale always carries a cost. Behind the great public works were labor, scarcity, and the relentless pressure to hold a civilization together before it began to crack. He built monuments meant for eternity. History left upon his face a silence as heavy as stone. Number 13. His palace walls were not decorated. They were designed to terrify. Ashurnasirpal II ruled the Neo-Assyrian Empire from approximately 883 to 859 years before the Common Era, and the relief carvings that once lined his palace at Nimrud give a detailed portrait. The curled beard, the ceremonial robe, the posture of a man who understood that power is a performance. These reliefs, now held in the British Museum and the Metropolitan Museum of Art, provide the visual foundation for AI reconstruction. History knows him as a conqueror who made empire into spectacle. But beneath the ritual grandeur was something colder, a man who built his authority on the architecture of fear. His palace once made enemies tremble. Now it whispers through broken stone. Number 12. He stands at the summit of a great black stone, receiving the instruments of divine justice. Hammurabi ruled ancient Babylon for approximately 42 years, from around 1792, before the Common Era, and the stele bearing his legal code remains one of the most iconic objects to survive the ancient world. That image, king before God, law carved in cuneiform beneath, provides the primary reference for AI reconstruction of his face. History celebrates him as the father of written law, the ruler who brought order to Mesopotamian chaos. But the laws themselves told a different story. They cataloged a world full of debt, punishment, and hardened inequality. He tried to master human nature with words. On that stone, justice still wore the face of fear. Number 11. He wore the crowns of two worlds and held them both at the edge of collapse. Taharqa ruled as Pharaoh of Egypt and King of Kush during the 25th dynasty, from approximately 690 to 664 years before the Common Era. Sphinxes bearing his likeness, sculptures of the god Amun sheltering the king, and relief carvings from Kawa give AI a clear visual basis for reconstruction. History remembers him as a Nubian pharaoh who revived Egyptian traditions and faced the advancing Assyrian Empire. But the weight on those broad shoulders was almost impossible to bear. He ruled at the fulcrum between two ages, the old world crumbling, the new world advancing. History remembers the invader's footsteps. It rarely records the name of the man who stood in the way. Number 10. His most famous statue is missing its head. Kanishka ruled the Kushan Empire across Central Asia and northern India around the 2nd century of the Common Era, presiding over one of history's great crossroads, a civilization where Buddhist philosophy, Persian culture, and Silk Road commerce converged. The headless statue discovered at Mathura, along with Kushan gold coins bearing the king's figure and titles, give AI the formidable task of reconstructing a face that time itself seems to have deliberately removed. History knows him as a patron of Buddhism and a master of the ancient trade routes. But the man who connected the world's most distant civilizations left behind the most conspicuous absence in his own portrait. His empire bridged everything. His face remains the largest gap. Number 9. He carved his truth into the face of a mountain, and the mountain still speaks. Darius I ruled the Achaemenid Persian Empire from approximately 522 to 486 years before the Common Era. The Behistun inscription, a vast royal relief cut into a cliff face in western Iran, alongside the great ceremonial carvings at Persepolis, provides AI with one of the richest visual foundations for any ancient Persian king. History celebrates him as the great organizer of empire, the ruler who standardized law, currency, and administration across an unprecedented territory. But the Behistun text is not only a record of victory, it is a political defense. The declaration of a man who knew his claim to the throne required justification. He carved his version of the truth into the mountain, because someone, somewhere, was already working on a different version. Number 8. He did not inherit an empire. He broke one and built another over its bones. Ardashir founded the Sasanian Empire in 224 of the Common Era, overthrowing the Parthian dynasty that had ruled Persia for centuries. The investiture relief at Naqshi Rostam, showing the king receiving the divine ring of power from Ahura Mazda, alongside carvings at Naqshi Rajab and Sasanian coinage, provide the visual basis for AI reconstruction. History remembers him as a revolutionary, the man who restored Persian glory after long decline. But his revolution was built upon the wreckage of the old order, the displaced nobility, the shattered courts, the lineages that had to end for his beginning to arrive. Every empire begins with someone else's ending. Number 7. He spent decades constructing a legend no Roman could destroy, and then the legend destroyed him. Mithridates VI Eupator ruled the kingdom of Pontus from around 135 years before the Common Era until 63 years before the Common Era. Silver tetradrachm coins bearing his portrait, a face styled in the image of Alexander, with flowing hair and the defiant profile of a man refusing defeat, provide the primary basis for AI reconstruction. History calls him Rome's most dangerous Eastern adversary, the king who ignited war across Anatolia. But beneath the martial mythology was a man hollowed by suspicion. He reportedly conditioned his body against poison. What he could not protect himself from was the slow corruption of trust. He resisted Rome to the end. He could not resist the loneliness of a king who no longer believed in anyone. Number 6. He built his own tomb on the summit of a mountain, surrounded by colossal gods, and placed his own face among them. Antiochus I Theos ruled the small but extraordinary kingdom of Commagene in southeastern Anatolia from approximately 70 to 31 years before the Common Era. The monumental sanctuary at Nemrut Da, with its enormous sculpted heads of the king, alongside the deities he claimed as ancestors, provides the primary visual foundation for AI reconstruction. History sees him as a ruler who tried to forge a divine identity from the wreckage of two fading empires, Greek and Persian. He staged his own immortality with stone and ceremony on a mountaintop. The great heads now lie scattered across a cold hillside, and the wind still calls the name of a king who tried to outlast the gods. Number 5. That face has been watching for over 2,000 years. Seuthes III ruled the Odrysian kingdom of Thrace during the late 4th and early 3rd centuries before the Common Era. What survives of him is extraordinary. A bronze portrait head with inlaid glass eyes, rendered with such individual precision that it barely feels ancient at all. Excavated from the burial mound at Golyama Kosmatka in Bulgaria alongside the grave goods of a warrior king, this remarkable object is the primary source for AI reconstruction, not as a royal type, but as a specific living face. History barely remembers his name. The bronze, however, did not forget. His kingdom dissolved. His legacy faded. But the eyes kept watch in the darkness of a sealed tomb, waiting for someone to finally look back. Number 4. He defended Egypt from the largest seaborne invasion the ancient world had ever seen, and then his own palace tried to finish what the enemy could not. Ramesses III ruled as pharaoh of the 20th dynasty from approximately 1186 to 1155 years before the Common Era. His royal mummy, the extraordinary battle reliefs at Medinet Habu, and surviving royal portraiture provide a rich foundation for AI reconstruction. History celebrates him as the last great warrior pharaoh, the defender of Egypt's northern delta against the Sea Peoples. But forensic examination of his mummy revealed a wound consistent with assassination. Ancient court records known as the Harem Conspiracy Papyri describe a plot against his life originating within the palace itself. He survived every enemy at his borders. the record remains open on who was waiting inside. Number 3. They placed jade over his face to make him eternal, and in doing so, they erased him. Kinich Janab Pakal Ayers ruled the Maya city-state of Palenque from 603 to 683 of the Common Era, nearly 80 years on the throne. The jade funerary mask that covered his face at burial, the intricately carved sarcophagus lid in the Temple of the Inscriptions, and royal relief carvings at Palenque provide the visual basis for AI reconstruction. History celebrates him as one of Maya civilization's greatest rulers, a king of long peace and remarkable architecture. But the mask made him immortal by making him a symbol. It placed beauty over a mortal face to ensure the world would never see the man beneath the myth. They preserved him in jade. That very jade announced his death. Number 2. He may have created the world's first empire, but history is no longer certain what he looked like. Sargon of Akkad ruled from around the 24th to the 23rd century before the Common Era, forging the Akkadian Empire from a network of Mesopotamian city-states into something the ancient world had never seen. A famous bronze head of an Akkadian ruler, discovered at Nineveh and now held in the Iraq Museum, is frequently associated with Sargon, though some scholars attribute it to his grandson Naram's sin. The identification remains disputed. That extraordinary object, alongside other Akkadian royal reliefs, forms the contested foundation for AI reconstruction. History made Sargon into the founding myth of power itself. Yet the greater his legend grew, the more the actual man beneath it dissolved. He may have built the first empire. History still cannot agree on which face belongs to him. Number 1. Before the pyramids, before the mummies, before the great pharaohs whose names filled temples for 3,000 years, there was a face carved on a stone pallet, and that face may have belonged to the man who first united Egypt. Narmer stood at the threshold of one of history's most transformative acts, the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt at the very close of the 4th millennium before the Common Era. The Narmer pallet, a carved ceremonial slate, bearing one of the earliest known depictions of an Egyptian king, provides the primary foundation for AI reconstruction. Some scholars connect Narmer with the legendary figure called Menes, traditionally named as the first pharaoh of unified Egypt. Others treat them as distinct individuals. The truth remains debated. What the palette makes clear is that here, at the very origin of pharaonic civilization, power made its first portrait, a king in a white crown, raising his arm above a kneeling enemy as a new civilization drew its first breath. Before Egypt had monuments, it had this face, and history has not finished asking who he truly was. These faces once commanded the ancient world. Now they return in silence. If history can be reborn, which face do you most want to see reclaimed from the dark?